Well, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, all the family coming out to support, taking pictures. I got to ask you a question because Thanksgiving's coming up. We're getting there real soon, and I do actually want you to answer, so just raise your hand so I can call on you. But what is your favorite Thanksgiving leftover? Your favorite Thanksgiving leftover? Raise your hand so I can see right here. Turkey? Cranberries? Yeah. Casserole? Okay. Yeah, right here? Yeah. Gravy? Yeah. That's like an entree for me at Thanksgiving is gravy. Yeah, in the back? In the back, yep.
Shoving everything together on a sandwich.
Just everything into a sandwich. Did you have Gwen, did you have a favorite Thanksgiving leftover? I saw your hand up. Pie. Yes. Yes. No matter what your mom tells you, eat pie first, then the meal, okay? So my favorite leftover might surprise you. I don't know if that's anybody loves this. It's the best, right? It's the best. It's the green bean casserole. Now, you can't truly eat it as a leftover until you replace the old French onions with new ones. That's the key. And sometimes, honestly, it's just a game of find the French onion for me. Sometimes I don't bother with the green stuff, but the French have been so good to us between the toast and the onions. I just want to thank them publicly here today. It's such a beautiful country. So this is one of my all-time favorite leftovers. I just skip the turkey. I skip everything. I just want this. And that is a shameless plug for you. If you're registering for our Thanksgiving potluck, please bring that because I can't cook. I can't make it. So I'm entirely dependent upon you to bring something like that. So we're going to talk about leftovers some more in just a little bit. But I want to thank you all first. If you're new to here to Crossroads, here's what you need to know about Crossroads. The best part of Crossroads is its people. It's not the log cabin building, though that's great. It's not the coffee, though that's great. It's the people. It's you guys. It's how well you love people. So I want to just reiterate some of the things that Alan already came up here and said, but you may not know this, but about 50% of our people serve at least one Sunday a month somewhere, using their gift, using their love, using their talent, which means we got a lot of room for more people to hop on teams because one of our values is make room for everybody. So if you want to join a team, you can talk to me and let us know that. But the people are the best part about this. So all of you loving the kids and welcoming people at the door and serving drinks and singing and playing and helping preach, all those things are what make us who we are. We could not be who we are without any of that. So I want to just say thank you for your generous hearts that bless somebody else, because like Jesus said, it is better to give than to receive, and I believe that. And so some of you may not know they even exist, but I want to thank all of our people up here in the Eagle's Nest who are pushing buttons and cranking levers. I don't know if you guys have levers in what you're doing up there or not. I'm sure there's a lever. Thank you. They really have all the power. They could turn off my mic right now. And there we go. Yeah, very good. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. We're taking more volunteers for upstairs if you'd like to join. We just created some new spots for you. So speaking of thank you, I want to welcome you to our thank you series. And this kind of the idea behind this series is that there's three ingredients for a fantastic Thanksgiving. And one is humility, one is generosity, and one is gratefulness. And so over this series, we want to talk about these three ideas. And so last week we talked about humility, being humble. And we said, you know what, maybe for Thanksgiving this year, we don't need as much apple pie or as much pumpkin pie as much as we may need this pie. We may need some of that. That we've just made, just a little humble pie. Because humble people are godly people. And humility, and the difficult thing about humility is not anything our culture values. I don't know if you've noticed that. That is nothing our leaders model for us. That if we want to find humility in our world, we got to search high and low to get it. I'm a huge sports guy. It's not always the athletes that are modeling that for us, is this idea of humility. But Jesus was different. If anybody had an excuse to not be humble, it was Jesus, because he was good at everything and could do anything. And yet he humbly served the anybody's and the everybody's. And Jesus said, you know what, I'm going to go a different way. Jesus went a different way than his culture. Jesus is inviting us to go this way, that Jesus made himself nothing in a world of people trying to make themselves into something. This is what Jesus did. This is what Jesus modeled. This is what Jesus has shown us, that if you're a Jesus follower, this is the Jesus way. This is not the way of our culture. It will be hard pressed to find this. But Jesus says, if no one else is going that way, I want to show you a new way. And it's making yourself nothing, which, hello, that sounds awful. I don't want to be nothing. I want to be something. I want to be great. And we live in a world where self-promotion and selfishness and selfies and social media are king. So we ask this question, would you be humble? Would you humble yourself? Would you make yourself nothing so that Jesus could become someone else's everything? Would you be able to play the game of the limbo in your life and go, how low can I go to serve humbly those around me? Now, in case you haven't met yet, I'm Adam, and I'm a recovering self-promoter, and I'm always one post away from stumbling again. So I'm working on trying to be more humble. But my name's Adam, and I want to welcome you to our home. And this is your very plush-sized living room. So I want all of you to sit back. I really want you to be comfortable, and I want your mind to be at ease. So, with that being said, let's talk about your money. Let's talk about your possessions and what you're doing with it, okay? So, if at any point, it took me a long time to pull that kind of money together. It took a while to get that shot. So, if any time in me talking about your money, you are uncomfortable or you take offense to anything that I say, I just want you to please email me at my email here, and I will gladly respond in order of when I get it. So please take a picture of that, write that down. All right, so I know what you may be thinking. You may be thinking, oh, I finally mustered up the courage to come to church and they're talking about money. Oh, go figure, right? You're like, oh, I'll go to church, I'll give it a chance. And you're like, man, that pastor's talking about our money. How do I get out of here? Doors are open, you can. But I do want to let you know beforehand, we're not going to end this morning by receiving another tithe or passing the baskets around again, okay? I'm not looking, and we're not looking to make anybody feel guilty this morning, but we are going to give you an opportunity to give in so many different areas locally and even internationally for those of you that are here that are willing and desiring to give and are cheerful. So we're going to talk about the cheerful piece too, that's a big deal to God as it relates to how we give. So what we really want to have a conversation today is around the idea of generosity, and that generosity is a great ingredient for Thanksgiving, but it's also a great ingredient for Thanksgiving. Being generous is a great way to do life. That's just a great way to do life, because we've all met people who are generous, and don't they just seem to enjoy life? Have you ever met a generous and just incredibly grumpy, irritable, horrible human? I've yet to meet them. Anyone that's generous, I'm just like, oh, they're so nice. They're so much better than me. Whatever. They're just generous people just seem to take joy in living life. They have this idea of thanksgiving. And here's just a few ways generosity is great for us. Generosity leads to less selfishness. Generosity leads to greater contentedness. That generosity is great in helping you become more grateful for what you have. I've met a lot of stingy people who weren't very generous, and their lack of generosity was also coupled with oftentimes a lack of satisfaction in their own life, a lack of contentedness. And not only have I met that person, I've been that person. I've met them. I've looked at him in the mirror, because I have not always had a generous heart. I've had less than a great attitude in my own life. Sometimes I've had this attitude, hey, what's mine is mine, I worked for it. you go do the same. I've used this excuse to not be generous. I just don't have enough margin to be generous. But you know who I always have margin for? This guy. I always have enough margin to be generous to this guy. I just don't know if I want to carve out enough margin to be generous to any of you, right? So I've had that attitude. I've been stingy sometimes. So I want to define stingy, and I didn't take this from dictionary.com. I just wrote it myself, so take that for what it's worth. But this is my definition for stingy. Stingy is someone who doesn't give financially or practically to others, and this is the key to the whole thing, regularly. That's the key. Stingy people don't give regularly. They may give a one-off, or hey, it's Christmas, or hey, it's Thanksgiving, or hey, it's this. But generous people, what makes them generous is that they get this. They get that idea. They are regular givers in every way. They don't pick, I'm going to be generous with my love, but not my money, or my money, but not my love. No. Generous people are continually growing in their generosity in all of these areas. They're like, Jesus, I want to be generous with my time, with my gifts, with my wallet, with my heart, with my love. They are inviting Jesus to grow in them in all of those areas. Now, here's just my personal opinion about stingy people. And generosity, I don't believe that there are any stingy people in our entire world. That's just my opinion. I really don't know that there's a single stingy person in the entire world, and here's why I believe this. I believe everybody in the world is generous to somebody. A few people are generous to everybody, and then some people are just generous to their own body. So I think everybody's generous. Everybody is generous to somebody. Some are just generous. I just want to be, how can I be generous? I see a need, meet a need. That's a generous person. Their heart is growing. They're not perfect. They're not better than anybody. But man, when they see a need, they want to meet a need because they give regularly. But even stingy people are generous. It's just to their own body. Because even when I was stingy, I was taking good care of me. I was taking good care of somebody. It might not have been anybody else, but it definitely was me. You may not even believe this. Because as a time someone who fights stinginess, I'll take care of my wants and needs. And you know what's common about stingy people? You may not believe this. A stingy person will even get themselves what they want when they want it, even if they can't afford it. Did you know that? That happens all the time. Literally, they will take care of themselves even at the expense of their future self. Their future financial self. They'll still just get what they want for themselves when they want it. So stingy people, is the way I'm defining it this morning, is someone who does not give regularly. The idea is everyone's generous. It's just not that everyone's generous to us. They're generous to themselves, and I can relate to that. So I want to look at the word generous, but before I do that, I need to address potentially a couple different groups in the room and anyone of our friends joining us online. The first group I want to address in the room is anyone that's a Jesus follower. You're like, I love Jesus. Yes, I do. I love Jesus. How about you? You're one of those people. You're like, I love Jesus. Okay, so if you're a Jesus follower, listen in. This is for you. I want to read you a verse from a guy named Paul who wrote a letter to a young friend of his named Timothy. And in his letter, here's what he's telling Timothy he should teach all Jesus followers to do. Here's what he says in 1 Timothy 6:8. He says, tell them, you, me, tell them to use their money to do good. I'm sure that includes the new Disney Plus streaming services. That is using money good, because I did it and it was good. He then says, you know what? You should be rich in good works. There's lots of ways to be rich and to be generous. You can be rich in good works. But again, generous people don't choose between being rich in good works or rich with their money. They choose both. So they should be rich in good works and should give, this is a big deal, happily to those in need. And this is a big word, always. Always. Always being ready to share. Always being ready to share with others whatever God has given them. Because sometimes we may be adults, but we're like little kids. What do you have to tell a little kid? You don't have to tell them how to be selfish. Have you ever had to have that conversation? No, this is how you really do it. They know how to do it. Put 2 kids in a sandbox and 1 tractor and watch the fun ensue. Right? You don't need to teach a kid to be selfish. And they don't need to teach us. So we need to be taught how to share. So this isn't something we grow out of because now we're adults. I'm married. I know how to share. No, God's like, yeah, you guys aren't getting it. He says, always being ready to share with others, whatever. See, because here's how a generous person looks at everything they have. Everything they have has come from God. So therefore, it's not really even mine. It's his. I'm not inviting anyone that's not a Jesus follower to share that viewpoint. But if you are a Jesus follower, this is the viewpoint of a Jesus follower. Everything they have is his. And they go, God, how would you have me use your stuff, your money, the talent you've given me, the gifts you've given me? Now, if you're here in the room, you are not a Jesus follower. Maybe you're here today, you're listening online, and you're an atheist, or you're agnostic, or you're just not quite sure what to believe or what's true. I want to read something to you from atheist author Richard Dawkins. I love this quote. This is so good. He said, let us try to teach generosity and altruism. This is important that he thinks we need to teach it. Because we are born selfish. He's kind of talking about what I was just talking about. Let us understand what our own selfish genes. I love this. He's like, we got some selfish genes in there that would just come out when we're born. I'm like, Richard Dawkins, yes, you are correct. Because we may then at least have the chance to upset their designs, something that no other species has ever aspired to do. So whether you're here a Jesus follower or you're here and you're an atheist, this morning I'm going to just do what I feel like they're telling me to do, which is to talk about your stuff and talk about money and talk about generosity. So let's look at the word generosity, and I want to show you some synonyms for the word generous. And I want you to think, don't ask your family now, you may get upset at the answer, but I want you to think, would your family and close friends, your parents or your kids use these words to describe you? Big-heartedness, open-handedness, open-heartedness, philanthropy, unselfishness. Not just in 1 week out of a season around Christmas, but would they use any of these words to describe you? Or would they use any of these other words? Cheapness, pinching, selfishness, stinginess, tightness. So it could take a great deal of self-awareness to know how much selfishness you have in you. I mean, that could just be hard to see in a mirror. So don't do it now, and wait till they're in a good mood and you're in a good mood. And then go to your closest friends and follower and go, if there's a spectrum, generous, open-handedness, philanthropy over here, and kind of more tightwad, stingy, where am I? Just tell me. Just tell me, where am I? The people that live next to you, with you, I mean, they know. They know. And if you see them like, let me think about that. Yeah, you know your answer. You're stingy, right? If they have to spend time thinking about how to say it in the best words, you're stingy, just, you got your answer. So that could be a tough thing to have to answer. But I want to ask you this. Are you becoming more and more, as you walk with Jesus, more generous or less and less? Because I believe, like most things in life, we are trending one direction or the other. We are moving slowly, quickly, whatever. We are growing and moving incrementally towards generosity over here, or we're moving slowly or quickly towards kind of more stinginess or close-handedness on the other side. So where are you moving? Where are you trending? That's a great question to begin to ask yourself, because Jesus followers should be growing naturally and incrementally in generosity, because that's what happens when you follow Jesus. Because Jesus understands this principle, and I'm going to share it to you in just a minute. But before I do, Paul was a Christian in the first century. He used to hate Christians, and then he became a Christian, and he planted churches, and he wrote a lot of letters to Christians living all around the world. And he wrote a letter to a group of Christians living in the city of Corinth, an ancient city in the first century, which is located in modern-day Greece. And in these letters, we're going to discover this principle that generous people get, and they live out. And here it is, 2 Corinthians 9:6. It says this, but remember this, because we forget, we got so much stuff in life, we just forget important things. So he says, but remember this, if you give little, you will get little. A farmer, and it's a very agrarian society, so a lot of farming imagery in the Bible. A farmer who plants just a few seeds will get only a small crop, but if he plants much, he will reap much, to which every person that had ever farmed in their lives, which isn't me, but back then we're like, duh. Yeah, if you just take like 5 seeds and throw it down, you should not expect a lot to happen if you give minimally and sparingly and sporadically. And then he's saying, but the opposite of true, if you just start throwing seed everywhere, you can expect the likelihood that more things have the potential to grow. So this is kind of like a duh, but this is the principle of sowing and reaping. But here's where we can get it messed up in church, especially some televangelists that I'll remain nameless can get this, is that this basically the only application becomes for this. If you give a lot of money, God gives you a lot of money. And can you see how that would only feed our narcissism and selfishness if that was the only application to this verse? Really? If I give a lot of dough, I get a lot of dough? Then why are we giving? So we can roll in more dough, right? So does God bless people financially who are generous financially? Oh, I think he does that all the time. I've experienced that countless times. And sometimes it's not even money. We've had in my family, this is crazy. This isn't normal. 2 different people have given us their car because God told them to. One of them, someone I had never met, said, God told us to give you our car. We needed a car. We were down a car. Our car got totaled. God spoke to some person I've never met, and they gave us the keys to their car. We was like, no, we can't take it. Like, no, you're taking our car. I'm not driving it. I mean, God he does crazy stuff. That's what he does. But I don't know that we should read into this that everybody give, because if you give, then you get more money and the decimal point on your paycheck moves to the right. It's going to be amazing. No, he certainly can bless people financially, but that is not exactly just what Paul is talking about, because that would only feed Richard Dawkins' selfish gene, right? That would only just feed that gene and make that scream louder, right? See, here's the point, and here's God's priority. You growing is more important than your bank account growing. That's God's priority. I want you to grow in every way, not just your bank account. I want you to grow. That God is so much concerned about you being rich as he is about you being enriched. Your life being enriched. Your life becoming more like Jesus. So in a book of Proverbs, which is in the Old Testament of the Bible, it's like a wisdom literature. A bunch of wise sages sat down and wrote down as many wise things as they could think of. And in one of these, in Proverbs 11, says this, and it addresses the principle of sowing and reaping. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. This is so big, whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters himself will be watered. Whoever wants to bring a blessing, who's ever interested in bringing a blessing will be enriched. Not whoever's willing, who's like just wanting to get blessed, but whoever's willing to be a blessing. In fact, there's this theme throughout all the Old Testament. If you read it, it's a lot of reading. Get it on audiobook with, Morgan Freeman or something to help you along doing the voiceover. But there's this idea that if you are blessed, it's so that you will be a blessing, that God's blessing for your life is not a means to your own end, that he wants you, if you're blessed at all in any way, it's so that you can be a blessing. He wants you to be enriched. And here's the beauty about generosity. Generosity not only grows you, but it blesses somebody else. Being generous sows seeds of gratefulness and contentedness in your own heart. Holding on and being generous to yourself will never sow seeds of contentedness and satisfaction. See, sowing seeds of generosity regularly can uproot the weeds of greed that can grow in your heart and my heart. And I'm telling you right now, greed is a hard thing to see in the mirror. That's why no one in church confesses to ever having greed. They confess to lust, adultery, fornication, whatever. No one fesses up to that one because we can't see it in the mirror. We just can't see it. But being generous, maybe for the first time, truly being generous will uproot anything that's like greed in your heart that may war against you wanting to do that. So now Paul wants to address motives and guilt that sometimes grows around giving. And I'm so glad he wrote these next words. This is in the same letter we've been reading from. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says this. I love this. This is so encouraging and this is so empowering, especially if you're like skeptical about religion and all they want is your money and they tell you how much that should be or whatever. Everyone must make up his or her own mind as to how much. Isn't that encouraging? Isn't that empowering? We believe this is the word of God, that God is speaking through Paul. When he wrote this, he said, make up your mind. Make up your mind how much you give. And then he's talking to people like me who stand up here and preach. He says, don't force anyone to give more than he really wants to. So that's not my heart desires to sit up here and tell you, force you or guilt you or manipulate you or make you feel bad to give more than you want to give. Because the heart of God, the reason why he says that to people like me, to not do that to you, for cheerful givers are the ones God prizes. That the attitude is more important than the amount. God cares about your heart. God cares about your heart. Your attitude as it relates to generosity is more important to God than the amount. But though this verse is encouraging and though this is an empowering verse, here's not what Paul is saying. Make up your mind about whether you want to be generous regularly or not. That's not what he's asking you to make your mind up about. He's assuming because you love Jesus that you want to give generously. He's just saying when you've made the decision to be a regular, generous person, make up your mind about how much that is and where that is and who that is. So don't get it twisted. He's not saying, hey, make up your mind whether you should be generous or not. No. He just assumes you love Jesus. You want to grow in being generous. And now he's empowering you to say, make up your mind when and who and how often you want to be regular. Because God loves a cheerful giver. God is the most cheerful giver in the world. He gives delightfully and cheerfully to you and to me. And he wants us to be just like him. So if you're here today and you maybe struggle a little bit in letting go of your stuff or seeing your stuff as really God's, and you would struggle in being a regular giver instead of just kind of a one-timer, I hope this message can encourage you and empower you. Because you know what makes generous people irregular people? Because they give regularly. That just makes them different. That just makes them not normal because they're committed to generosity, not just in a season, but for their entire lives. Now, Paul then addresses the real-time fear that people have as it relates to giving and generosity. And he says this in 2 Corinthians 9:8. Because immediately people will hear these words like, I can't give. Oh, it hurts. It's painful to give generously. Trust me, you saw my bank account. You know my credit card statement if you saw it. Scary. Why could you? I can't give regularly. God is able to make it up to you by giving you everything you need. Maybe not what you want, but everything you need and more so that there will not only be enough for your own needs, I love this, but leftovers. God loves leftovers too. It's not cranberries because that's nasty. Sorry, whoever said that right over there. That's nasty. It really is. And whatever those potatoes are with marshmallows, yeah, that's disgusting too. I love this, that God gives us leftovers so no one gets passed over, that God blesses us with leftovers. See, generous people end up with leftovers so that nobody else gets passed over. Because that's the heart of God. Yes, he loves you, and yes, God loves the entire world. So he wants to use his followers to share their leftovers so that nobody gets passed over. Because there's a ton of people that get passed over. Here in our city, in our country, and then of course in countries all around the world. Those of you who've been in the military and traveled around the world, or your business takes you, you've seen that. People that just have so much less. And so much of that is out of their control because of a corrupt government and corrupt institutions. So God is looking to us. I want to give you leftovers. Generous people experience leftovers. And generous people share their leftovers so that no one else gets passed over. And I love how these leftovers that we use to give to others, what it does for them. Paul tells us in this same letter, he says in 2 Corinthians 9, he says, yes, God will give you much so that you can give away much. And when we take your gifts to those who need them, they will break out into thanksgiving. That when we share our leftovers with others, they break out into thanksgiving. They give praise to God because of what you did for them. And some of you are here today. You've experienced this Thanksgiving due to the generosity of someone else. Maybe it was anonymous, or maybe it was someone you knew, but they just blessed you. They just took their leftovers and said, no, you have it. And you couldn't believe that they would even do such a thing. And what did that do in your heart? That made you not only be thankful towards them, but it made you grateful towards God. That person or those people helped you to know that God sees you, and he knows you, and he loves you. Jesus would address probably the reason why it's so hard for us to be generous regularly. He did this in a teaching found in Matthew 6. He says this, because he knows this is my tendency. This may be your tendency, and he knows that. Don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. He knows this could be our natural proclivity, because this is the way the culture takes us, is laying up treasures for yourself. How much can I accumulate? I know this is old news now, but isn't that kind of insane that we have reality shows based upon so many people that have storage units all around? And they have so much they don't even bother to deal with the stuff in their storage unit. Like they can't fit it in their home, and then they can't fit it in their garage, and then they put it in a storage unit, and then they forget they even have that. We love to do this. So Jesus, thousands of years ago, looks ahead and goes, I know what Adam's tendency is going to be, to lay it up for himself instead of give it away. So he says, don't lay up stuff. Because if you become greedy, that's going to capture your heart. He says that's where your heart will go. And he's after the heart. He's after the heart. He wants to, it's not a comparison. How generous are you compared to me? He's saying, no. God doesn't compare his kids, first of all. You need to know that. He doesn't have a favorite kid. He's a good father. So you don't need to compare your level of generosity compared to the person next to you, but are you growing in generosity? Are you giving regularly? And he talked about our heart, and this is where our heart can get us in trouble, and our heart can let us down. See, I believe this about your heart. I think this is true about all of your hearts. Our heart has a desire to be generous, but it often lacks a plan. I believe your heart is generous. I believe in your heart you want to be generous. Sometimes you just may lack a plan. I believe my heart and your heart has a sincere intention to want to give, but it may lack follow through. That our mind intellectually comprehends and understands the need to be generous, and our hearts can be moved with emotion, but our hands and feet may not move practically. And how many of you guys know, and how many of you guys experience that good intentions are good for nothing? Right? If you say, I got my gym membership, I intend to go. You're like, it's early. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's early. Good intentions don't really get us anywhere. They're not bad, but they don't necessarily help us follow through. So that's where our heart can let us down. So I want to move from the heart and desire and intention to just practical. And here's where I want to actually give you some options to consider. None of you have to do any of these, but I know sometimes when you have a generous heart, one of the things that holds you back from giving is you're just not sure where, who. Right? Sometimes it's like, I want to give, I just don't know where or who. So I want to give you some options. These are not your only options. You can go find more options. But we do have some really cool options, some international, some local, that I want to share with you that you today could move on to practice being a regular, generous person. So here's the first one. Shoe boxes. We have 12 left. That's it. They're downstairs as you exit. This is an international opportunity. This group, Samaritan's Purse, it's literally shoe boxes, because you stack a shoe box filled with supplies and gifts for children all around the world, across all the continents of the world. You pack it, and they're due. They need to be returned by next Sunday is the very last day you can do this. There's 12 left. So if you haven't gotten one, grab one on the door on the way out, and you can see, go to their website, you can see what it is you can put in there, what you can't put in there, and these will get shipped shipped all around the world. You can actually pay a couple extra dollars to have your package tracked so you know exactly what city and village and what country your shoebox ended up so that somebody can have Christmas, because Christmas is the best. So I'm already listening to Christmas music, by the way, so judge me now. I'm fine with that. So there's no good Thanksgiving song, so I've just moved on. All right. Your next opportunity to give is called the Angel Tree. If you live in South Ogden, South Weber, or the city of Uinta, which technically we are in the city of Uinta, if you didn't know that, at the city building, they have an angel tree, which literally, if you could just cross the freeway. They have an angel tree, and these tags represent a family, a poor family in our area. So what you can do is you can go to the city building in Uinta, grab one of these, and it'll let you know what it is that you can get the family, and then you'll come and bring it back. So if you live in this community, this is really great. It literally, you can get there in about 3 minutes from here. It's not open today, of course, but you can head there this week to do that. Another really cool thing that is brand new that my friend Brooke Morley is doing for us is backpacks for those facing homelessness. I just bought one recently. They're $50. They're supplied with a week's worth of food and water, gloves, beanies, all kinds of neat things that go inside. You can go to our Welcome Center and buy one of these. I'm just putting it in the trunk of my car so that when I'm driving, it's just grab and go. If I see someone and God's like, yep, she needs it, yep, he needs it, yep, they need it, I just pop my trunk, pull over, hand them the bag, and go. So this is really cool. You can buy one of these at our Welcome Center and just put it in your car and go. We're going to just be doing these. You can do this year round. We're going to have this stuff going. When you order it, they'll make it. You'll get it. You can also help just donate the supplies for the backpacks. If you're like, I don't want a backpack, but I want to donate supplies for it, you can do that. Any of that stuff works. You can even volunteer to make the backpack and put it together. So that's a cool opportunity. The next one is Heart for the House. So this is one, if like Crossroads is your family, Crossroads is your home, and like this is your house, there are a number of I'm not a homeowner yet, but I'm in the process. But how many of you homeowners know you just have like that list of things like, oh, we need this or we need that. So we got that too. Our 2nd Street campus in Ogden needs an air conditioning unit. How many of you guys know that could be pretty hot for our people in the summer? So we have stuff like that, retarring the asphalt, nothing that's super glamorous, but things you just need, in our case, $50,000 for. So if you want to do Heart for the House, you can also do that out the Welcome Center. Those are just 4 options. You can take one, take more than one, or go online. And our family loves to give to Compassion International. So many great organizations out there that you can do that. So I want to have my prayer teams come forward. Can you join us as a prayer team as well? Prayer teams come up. And I want to pray for you. And if you're just like, I want to be more generous, I just want to be more generous, then man, let us pray for you. If you need prayer for something that has nothing to do with what we talked about, but you just need prayer, our friends will pray for you. Prayer teams, come on up, pick a side. And I'm going to pray for you. So would you please stand? And I want to thank you again for being here. We love you. So appreciate you being here. And God, I just pray for me and pray for all of our friends that you would grow in us generosity. That we'd be generous in our homes, and we'd be generous in other people's homes, both in our city, but nationally and around the world. God, would you help us to be more like you, regular givers. Help us to be cheerful in our giving. God, use us to bless others so that they will one day sing your praises and not ours. We love you. We thank you for this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, friends.